Yes, sir. So, good evening to the esteemed members of Team Research Foundation of India, our distinguished schedule expert, Dr. Ankita Jain, ma'am, and all our valued participants. It is my honor to welcome you all to the concluding day of the Faculty Development Program and Training Program on a step by step guide to writing a good research paper. This collaborative initiative has been organized by the Research Foundation of India and RFI-CARE in association with City University, Punjab and Shodh Malwa. We are deeply grateful to all our sponsors, GHERF, ARGA, and Edu Academic Inc. for their generous support, which has made this program possible. And over the past few days, our session experts have explored a wide array of insightful topics, including art of writing, research paper, and review of literature, application of Excel and SPSS for data analysis, hypothesis development and testing, and understanding ethical issues and plagiarism. And today it is my privilege to welcome for the third time our most strategic and diligent session expert, Dr. Ankita Jain, ma'am, coordinator of foreign affairs at the Research Foundation of India. And she has already taken two sessions in this FDP, and today she will be presenting on conclusion and summary. So with that, I invite Dr. Ankita ma'am to please begin her presentation. Thank you. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Neha ma'am, and thank you so much, Team RFI, for giving me this opportunity again for the session. And I also thank the participant to have this FDP in your schedule and understanding the importance of various steps in writing a review of like writing the different good research paper, step by step guide for writing very good research paper. Like obviously we all know that how to write a research paper, but yes, everywhere whenever we are listening to someone, we add something new to the knowledge. So already in this training schedule and the different FDPs, different development programs, we understand about different parameters. Maybe sometimes we know already, and sometimes we add something new to our knowledge. In this particular FDP, you have talked about writing research paper and report, also understanding the impact factor and publication. Also, problem identification, art of writing, review of literature, questionnaire designing and development, application of Excel, application of SPSS. Also, hypothesis development and testing, understanding research design and sampling, compiling the references and bibliography, and ethical issues in the plagiarism. And my last session today for this FDP is based on the conclusion and summary, which is the last part of the research paper. So we started with the first one, that was writing the research paper, and ending with the last one, that is conclusion. So as you already know that I have already mentioned in one of my lecture in the first one that we have some steps while we are writing a research paper. So it starts with the abstract, but the first step is introduction. Second one is review of literature. Third one is research methodology. Fourth one is results and analysis. Next one is findings and discussion, and last one comes, that is conclusion. And after that comes the references. So today we are going to talk about the conclusion. So as you already know that there are step by step should be followed when we are preparing any paper or doing any work. But when we are concluding it, it is really important to understand how to write it, because conclusions should look like a conclusion. It shouldn't be vague. It should really conclude. It should not look repetitive. So for that insights, I am going to start with my session, which is going to tell you like what exactly should be included while we are writing a conclusion. So let's start with it. I hope my voice is audible and my slides are visible to everyone. Somebody please confirm.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am, they are
ma'am.
quite visible.
Okay, thank you. So let's start with it. So the conclusion or summary. So as I have already told you about this, that this is the format which we should follow while we are writing a conclusion. So the conclusion is intended to help the reader understand why your research should matter to them after they have finished reading the paper. So when we start reading the abstract, it starts with the introduction of any topic and end with all the methodologies and conclusion, what were your results and findings. And then we write the keywords. When it comes to the conclusion, it talks about what objectives were there and have you achieved those and how much, like till what level, what extent you have achieved that. So it is not merely a summary of your points or just a restatement of your research problem, but also a synthesis of key points. Also, it is the final paragraph of a research paper which serves or helps the researchers to understand why this research was important. So, if we talk about the conclusion, it is all about restating the problem statement, which we have already discussed. What is problem statement? So, in the conclusion, we restate it, that what was the research problem, then we summarize the research paper, and finally we discuss the implication of the research paper. So these three things comes in the conclusion. There is one more thing I would like to mention before going ahead, that conclusion doesn't only having some paragraphs which is talking about the objectives and everything, but yes, also it is having some things like, for an example, there are four extended part of the conclusion which I always say. Number one is limitations of this study. Number two, suggestions and recommendations. One more important, that is implications of the study. And last thing which comes is future research scope. So I am going to talk about these also. So let's start with this particularly, do's and don'ts. If we talk about do's of the conclusion, so make it concise and straightforward. Because already when you have done your results and analysis, in that you have shown some tables, charts, and you have given the interpretation, you have analyzed the work. But when it is coming next, that is finding and discussion, already you have talked about what were your hypotheses, what were your results, and leading to the findings, what were the major findings. And also you have discussed the results with the previous studies, with the previous literature. Is it up to the mark or not, whether previous studies are supporting your work or not. So this is how we write the findings and discussion. When it comes to the conclusion, so it should be very concise, it should be very straightforward, it should not discuss anything, it should not talk about any findings, it should not talk about a result, it should just have the a glimpse of your work, whatever you have done, restating the research problem and talking about the main points. So highlight the major outcomes, summarizing the main points, and make a connection between opening and closing statement. We will study in this particular session that your conclusion should not be indifferent, it should not be different from the introduction. It should look like that you are writing something related to introduction, but it should not be repetitive. Means conclusion and introduction means opening paragraph and closing statement should be uh, you know uh, should have a connection, it should not be different. Providing a brief overview of your research paper, it should also address whether or not it answers your research question. Obviously, research question, research problem, whatever we have discussed in the beginning, what objectives we have added, and hypothetically, by with the help of hypothesis, basically, we have proved it is right or wrong. So, research question should be answered here. You should also use some broad statements. You should summarize the key points and the purpose, the objectives of the research. State the significance or the results. Also, you should use simple language which everybody can understand. Then, write the important insights of the research. Again, I am using some words just like key points, key insights, important points, broader statements, some paragraphs. Okay, central point. You should understand all these, that it is talking about some lines, a single or two paragraphs where you can concise your work. Don'ts. So do not include completely new information in your conclusion. As I have told you that it should have some connection between introduction and the conclusion. It should not include completely new information in your conclusion. Sometimes what happens, after doing research or writing work, you must be having something in your mind whenever you were starting this work. But later what happened, you will understand that somehow or somewhere it must be having giving you some different information. Am I audible?
You are not audible, ma'am.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
voice is breaking.
Yeah, as I have told you, that new information, sometimes what happens whenever we are doing some study, so what happens, we have something in our mind that it should be like this, means there should be some outcome, there should be some, there are some expectations that our result should be like this, the outcome should be like in this way. In that case what happens, we try to write something what we were having in our mind, but it should not be like that. It should always be like stick to the point, whatever we were discussing, whatever is our topic all about, whatever we have found from our topic. So basically that it should not include any new information. It should add only what you have drawn from your results. For an example, sometimes we try to give suggestions and recommendations, so we try to write whatever we think, but what we should not write whatever we think, we should write whatever has come through the results. Okay, because we are not writing our thoughts, we are writing the conclusion what has come out with the help of results. Do not introduce new data or interpretation. Also, again, we should not introduce, we should not write anything new, new data, new interpretations, whatever is there, whatever results you have come out with, it should be there. Avoid repetition. Again, as I have already mentioned, you should not write whatever you have written in results, in findings. So result should have different things, findings should have something else, and conclusions should have something else. Means results will be having the tables and its interpretation, right? Findings should be having the major work, whatever has come out along with the discussion, and the conclusion should have, basically in findings we write the findings, findings with the help of hypothesis, that what hypothesis we were doing having, what hypotheses were framed, and accordingly what is the result, what those hypotheses accepted and rejected. But when it comes to the conclusion, it should be objectivized, that these were our objectives, and these are the results. So it should have different things. Avoid to over generalizing and exaggerating. Don't generalize, whatever is there, be try to be specific. No to methods, discussion, results. As I have already said, mention the inferences, insights, and implications of the study. Also, avoid the phrases like in summary, in conclusion. Obviously, we are already writing those. So, you should not use such phrases. Avoid the overuse of the complex jargons or any kind of technical terms, because if somebody who is basically we should use layman language where we can everybody can understand, whether it is a person from a normal any general background, or any basic a starting a beginner, a researcher, or any academician, whoever is, like they can understand this. Don't just simply repeat the introduction already said. Do not simply reiterate your results or the discussion. And also, tot- your connection with the introduction should be there. So do not put the a conclusion which is totally different from the introduction. So these were the do's and don'ts. Now, what to write? If these things should not be there, then what should be there? So we should mention what? Number one, brief overview and significance of this study, importance of this study. Also describe how to apply the findings in the real world. We call it implications. Okay. So first, significance or importance of the study. Then suggestion and recommendation for the relevant future work without introducing new information. As I have said, that sometimes what we think that we should, it should be like this, it should be like that. So suggestion should not be in this way. It should have what? What suggestions and recommendation are your studies suggesting on the basis of results. Then share the ideas for the future research, future studies. We call it future research scope. I would like to focus on this point. See, I have, when I was, telling you about the review of literature in a session, I was also mentioning this, that whenever we are doing any review of literature, so we should also read the conclusion part. Okay. In the conclusion, what happens? In the conclusion, we see that what results were have done by this study. Okay. In that case, there is one thing every study is having, that is future research scope. So by reading any of the research papers, the future research scope, you can understand what is not done. You can also include that in your objectives in your study. So also in your study too, you must have seen that you have covered this, but there is something which is still left. So that you can also write in the conclusion part. We call it extended part of the conclusion as future research scope. Do not mention the limitations of your study. Sorry, do mention of the limitations of this study. You must have faced some problems. You must be having some some issues, or while doing some challenges you must have faced. So you should write the you should mention the limitations. Then writing the discussions of in the discussion, also you should write the implication of the study. After the conclusion, this is one more part where you are writing implications of the study. Implication for can be for the society, can be for the researcher, can be of the any kind of stakeholder which are connected. For an example, you are doing any research on banks, so the implications can be for the research scholars or researchers. It can be for the academicians. It can be for the bankers. It can be for the banking employees. Means banks or banking employees, means the employer and the employees. And finally, you should also write one concluding statement. And that should be very proper. It should be impressive. Now, next question comes in our mind, what should be the length of the conclusion? So, while there is no hard and fast rule on the length of the conclusion, it should typically have one paragraph long. It may be sometimes you can find that you want to add something, so 2 or 3 paragraph long, not more than that. The length of the conclusion varies, but it generally recommend to be concise. So for around 5 to 7 sentences, or roughly 10% of the total paper length. Okay, for a research paper basically. And if we talk about the total word count, so 5 to 7% of the total word count. Means again, now people will have some more question in their mind, that see, I have written my conclusion like this, I have written like this. When it comes to research paper, what should be the conclusion length? When it comes to PhD thesis, what should be the conclusion length? So see, first of all, it is your study. You can modify according to your your choice. First of all, as much as you want, you can add. But again, conclusion should not look like an introduction. It should not look like results. It should not look like a finding and discussion chapter. So as less as you can write. Okay. Try to concise it 1 to 3 paragraphs, not more than that. Then also, if not, this is not suitable, Then also you can use this particular thing, that 5 to 7 sentences, or if we talk about even the thesis, 10% of your whole thesis can be the conclusion, not more than that. So any of the way you can choose, and you can find out the right size for the or length of the conclusion. So some basically some broader paragraph statements are coming in the conclusion. Now, how to write conclusion section? Already we have discussed. So restate the problem statement already. Then discuss the main findings. Okay, implication, practice, policies, theories, a- any sort of limitations, and whatever we have learned. Also, accordingly, you should write the future research. Okay, so basically, we should wrap up your ideas. Then summarize the last thoughts, answer the question, so what? Then significance of the study. That this should be the part of the conclusion. The purpose of a conclusion is to summarize the key points. So you have to give a recap, then reinforce the significance, importance of the study in a broader context. Then call to action or future direction means future research scope or any kind of suggestions it is providing for the further future research. So it should be there. Then leave a lasting impression. You should also ensure that a reader or researcher is impacted by your key insights or key results. So, exactly what to do? Answer or restate the research question, summarize and reflect your key research findings. Key findings should be there. How well your results match the expectation. I have already told you that what your objectives you should know. According to the objective, what are the results you should write in this way? Means your objective should match your conclusion. Means what was the objective? Has that completed or not? So whatever your expectation, is that matched or not? So what were your expectation? What is it? What have you got? That is, you can find out the gap. Then why did you took that approach? Whatever methods, whatever things which you have finalized for a study. So why was that? Make recommendations and suggestions, but it should be based on conclusion. Then emphasis your contribution or implications, you can say, contribution to the society, to the researchers, or the research world, you can say. And finally, you have to wrap up the work. So last 10 tips for the conclusion. Number one, provide a concise recap. Remind the reader of your for the research goals and their accomplishment. Means your objectives and what did you find out. Stick to summarizing the existing content and avoid totally refrain adding the new details. Emphasize why your research matters, why it is important, and how it is contributing to the society. So broader implications should be there. Clearly explain the practical or theoretical impact of your findings. Also, you should prompt the readers to reflect how your research influences their perspective. After reading the conclusion, that people should have in their mind, whatever they were having in their mind about their any of the study, is that true or not? Whether they have cleared the doubt or not, they had clarity over their mindset, what they were having in their mind while they were reading this paper. Briefly discuss the robustness of your research methods, that how these methods were useful or is important for your study, and with a suggestion for the future research or practical application. Transparently address any constraint or biases. Means if there was any limitation, you should address it, you should write it, so that next time if somebody else is doing any research, they can also take care of that. And on a powerful note, okay, leaving a memorable impression on your reader. So impressive statements, key insight should be there. So that's it from my side about the conclusion. Now I am open for the uh, s- uh, question answer session. If somebody is having anything in their mind, they can ask me. We can discuss more about it. Please let me know.
Ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am, what is the difference between findings and conclusion? Mostly what happens sometimes it overlaps. Like, so
Yeah,
how
I
to
have
do?
mentioned this. Again, I am telling you. Yeah. See, I have mentioned three things. The majorly last three chapters which are there, okay? Results, then next chapter is findings and discussion, and last is conclusion. So, as such, you are going to talk about only one thing, okay? That is what were your results, okay? But how to differentiate these three chapters? So, I have mentioned, you listen to it again. Whenever we are writing the results chapter, that is data analysis and interpretation, or we call it results and interpretation. So it is clearly saying that we have to talk about the what the, like, we have come out with the tables, charts, or something, any kind of testing, whatever we have done, we have to do that, okay, in results chapter. And for those results we have to write the interpretation. That's it. Next chapter, that is findings. So in findings, what we have to write, that this was our hypothesis one. Okay. So this was the, like, for example, on for hypothesis one, you have applied some results. So you have to write in the findings that this was the hypothesis and these were the findings. These was the results as per the findings. So ultimately you are writing the results only, but in a way of findings, in with the with respect to hypothesis. So you should always write your findings hypothesis wise. Okay, that hypotheses were accepted or rejected. Okay, and the last one, that is conclusion. What happens that in the conclusion we have to talk about objectives, that this was our objective, now we have achieved it or not. So objective one, we are not writing hypothesis, objective one, and this is the result. Okay, so when we are
Okay,
writing
ma'am.
in the, yeah, in the findings we are writing hypothesis wise, in the conclusion we are writing objective wise. So obviously we are talking about only one thing, those are our results, but in all the three chapters we are writing it differently. In first one we are talking about the interpretation, in the second one we are talking about discussing on the hypothesis, acceptance and rejection, and in the last one we are talking about the objectives accomplishment, whether it is achieved or not.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome. Any other question?
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Ma'am, can I ask a question regarding research gap?
Yeah, tell me, ask me.
Actually, our university has access to only two, three journals like Springer, Taylor, and Francis, and we don't have access to Scopus. So after reviewing the paper from all those sites, uh, how am I supposed to know that what I'm going to do has been done in Scopus or not?
You were asking me about the research gap, but I understand your question is something different.
Uh,
Hello.
I, hello,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Can you tell me again? You were asking me about the research gap, but can you repeat the question?
I was saying that our university has access to only limited journals like Springer, Taylor, and Francis. So I
Okay.
just review paper related to my topic from those journals.
Hmm.
So and I just have some just thought that I'll just conduct my research in particular way. Now, how am I supposed to know that the things which I'm going to do has been done or not?
See, your university is not having access, but you have the access. You have Google, right? So apart from those reputed journals which your university is having, you can also search it anywhere else or as well. Apart from that, like Google you can use, Google Scholar you can use, means there are some other website where the research is research work, research papers are available. So you can read more research paper. As much as you will read, you will get the answer to your research for the research gap, like what objectives you can choose. So you should also try to explore apart from those also.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
what I was thinking is what I'm going to do, like methodology, data collection, all those stuff. What if it meets with what has been done with before? How am I supposed to differentiate?
See, every person is having a different title, first of all. And obviously, the title is different, the objectives would be different. You must be having your different scale for the data collection. Any other method you must be using, so it would be totally different, obviously. But you should always ensure this, that whether it is not available, like already somebody has not done it. So you can search it again, that there are how many papers are available for, on your research paper, on the title which you are having. Accordingly, then you can check out on those, that what kind of methods they have followed, and then you can check it out. Have you got your answer?
Mm, but
Yeah.
there are certain papers right from that scopus. What if it coincidentally matches what I'm going to do? That's what bothering
Then
me.
if somebody has already published it, that you have to change your work, you cannot copy it.
Yeah, ma'am, that's my question. How am I supposed to know that whether it has been done or not?
So that's what I am saying. For that, you have to do review of literature. You have to do the rigorous work. While you are doing a review of literature, you have to find out that what has been done. That's the thing which we have to do in the review of literature, that we should not duplicate or we should not copy anybody's work. Whatever is already done, that should not be repetitive. That's it.
Okay, ma'am, thank you.
Yeah. Any other question? Any other question?
Ma'am, preprint should be cited in the paper or not?
Sorry.
Preprints of the paper should be cited in another paper or not? Can we cite preprints?
Reprints? Because you are using the review of literature, so you should write the references for the same. Or hello.
Ma'am, preprints that are not published yet. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So I am just telling you that whatever you have done earlier, okay, you should mention, okay, what that should be mentioned in your paper as the I mean in basically before the work which is not published. If that, see, there are two types of publication you get. One is under publication, like one is published. Another, some paper are working paper, but they are at some of the stage where the people do publish that also.
yes, ma'am.
If that is again published, if it is published, you can mention that.
If it is my work and I am writing another research paper and
Hmm.
want to cite it in my paper because
No, that,
it creates
if it is
flag.
not published, you cannot. If it is not published, you cannot.
So how can I reduce flag in this situation? Because it is showing flag. Preprint is not published, and I'm working the same area and writing another research paper. How can I reduce the flag?
Until it is not published. So if it is not published, then it will not be shown anywhere. Then if you are using that content in another paper or that, doing that, so because it is not published, so it will not show plagiarism in that.
Ma'am,
How it will happen?
if I use the platform like Research Square and my preprint is on Research Square, then it is showing flag.
Then you should write it in a different like you should paraphrase it, you should write in a different language, you should refer it, but you should write it as a new content. It should not be the same, it should not have the same words, sentences or something like that. That you can do.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other question? Any other question? Somebody has written in the chat box how to get patterns for the research paper. So in the beginning, I have shared one pattern. Pattern is nothing but should be the steps. So already this FDP was on the steps only. So in the first chapter, first lecture also, you must have heard about writing the steps uh, or pattern about the research paper. In the literature review session, when I was taking the session, I have already discussed. Even in this session, when I started the this particular lecture, also I have mentioned the pattern for the research paper. Also, whenever you are planning to write any kind of research paper, you can also again search some research paper of the same type. You can check out the pattern and you can use it. Any other question? Neha ma'am? Neha ma'am? Welcome.